The metal cuffs bite into my wrists the moment I try to move, and the sound of that chain scraping against the floor is the first thing I hear before I even open my eyes. I am awake before the light hits me, awake before the guards start shouting orders in a language I still do not fully understand after 3 years of hearing it every single day. My name is Owen Bell, and I have not seen the sky without bars in front of it for longer than I can remember clearly. The room smells like rust and old sweat. Around me, other prisoners stir on the cold floor, some human, some not, all of us waiting for the same thing. Today is an auction day. I know because they gave us the gray uniforms instead of the brown ones, and the gray ones are only for days when we are meant to be looked at, priced, and sold. A guard grabs my arm and pulls me up. His grip is strong enough to bruise, but I do not fight it. Fighting only earns you a longer chain and a smaller cell. I learned that lesson during my first month here, and I have never forgotten it since. They march us down a long corridor lit by strips of pale blue light. The walls hum faintly, powered by something I cannot see. Every step echoes, and every echo reminds me that I am inside a place built by people who do not think of me as a person at all. To them, I am cargo. Exotic cargo, maybe, because humans are rare this far out in Caldrisi territory, but cargo all the same. The auction platform is outdoors, open to a violet sky streaked with 2 moons still visible, even though the sun has started to rise. Cold wind bites at my skin through the thin uniform. Buyers stand in rows, wrapped in dark robes or polished armor, their eyes scanning us like we are livestock at a market. In a way, we are. I have stopped counting how many times I have stood on a platform like this. Different planets, different buyers, always the same feeling in my chest, like something inside me is being slowly hollowed out. I keep my eyes down. Looking up invites attention, and attention here is never a good thing. Then the crowd goes quiet. It is a strange kind of quiet, the kind that happens when someone important walks into a room. I risk a glance upward and see a procession moving through the market, guards in ceremonial armor forming a path. At the center walks a young woman, unlike anyone else here. Her skin has a faint silver sheen under the morning light, her eyes a deep violet, and she wears robes stitched with patterns that mark her as nobility, maybe even royalty. The auctioneer nearly trips over his own feet, trying to bow to her. She does not look at the auctioneer for long. Her eyes move across the platform, across the rows of chained prisoners, and then they stop on me. I do not know why. Maybe because I am one of the only humans here. Maybe because I forgot to look away in time. Whatever the reason, she studies me for a long moment, and I see something in her expression that I have not seen on anyone here before. Not curiosity, not amusement, something closer to disgust, though I cannot tell if it is directed at me or at the platform itself. She asks the auctioneer a question in Caldrisi, low and sharp. He answers quickly, gesturing toward my back, where the scars from an old punishment are visible through the thin fabric of my uniform. Her jaw tightens. She says nothing else. She simply turns and walks away, her guards falling into step behind her. I do not think much of it. Powerful people look at prisoners like us all the time, and their reactions never change anything. The auction continues. I am not sold that day, not because no one wants me, but because the bidding runs out of time before they reach my row. They march us back to the holding cells as the sun climbs higher, and I tell myself that tomorrow will be exactly the same as every day before it. I am wrong. Sometime before dawn the next cycle, I hear the soft click of a lock. I open my eyes expecting a guard with a meal tray, the only reason anyone ever comes this early. Instead, I see her, the same young woman from the platform, hood pulled up over her silver hair, alone, with no guards in sight. She holds a small device in her hand, and before I can say anything, she presses it against my restraints. The chains fall away with a quiet hiss. For a moment, I do not move. I have learned not to trust sudden kindness in this place. Kindness usually comes with a price, or worse, it is not kindness at all, but a test to see if I will run, so they can punish me for trying. She crouches down so we are at eye level. Her voice is quiet, careful, like she is speaking a language she does not use often. My name is Aiel, she says. I do not have much time. I am freeing you. I ask her why. It comes out rougher than I intend. my voice unused to speaking so early in the day. She hesitates before answering. Because what I saw yesterday was wrong, she says. Because no one else in this empire seems to care, and I cannot pretend I did not see it too. I study her face, looking for the trick, the trap, the hidden motive. I do not find one, just a young woman who looks tired in a way that has nothing to do with sleep. She tells me the guards change shift in 20 minutes, and there is a service corridor that leads to the outer wall, unmonitored at this hour. She says once I am outside the market grounds, I am on my own, but at least I will not be someone's property anymore. She presses the small device into my hand, some kind of scanner that can open other locks if I need it, and she stands to leave. I could take the chance she is giving me. I could disappear into the crowded streets beyond the market and try to find my way to wherever humans have managed to build a foothold in this part of the galaxy, assuming any exist out here at all. It would be the safe choice, the smart choice. Instead, I ask her a question of my own. I ask her if she can get me an audience with her father. She stares at me like I have said something in a language she does not understand. Her father, she says slowly, is the sovereign of the Caldrisi Empire. He does not grant audiences to freed slaves. He barely grants them to visiting dignitaries. I tell her I am not asking to be granted anything. I am asking her to help me stand in front of him and speak. I tell her that running will keep me alive for a while, maybe even for years if I am careful. But it will not change anything for the next person who ends up chained to that platform. And there will be a next person. There always is. As long as no one with any power decides to look directly at what is happening and call it what it is. She is quiet for a long time. I watch her weigh the risk in her mind, the same way I have watched buyers weigh the price of a prisoner. Finally, she says that what I am asking could cost her everything. Her title, her standing, maybe her safety. I tell her she already risked all of that the moment she opened my cell door. The only difference now is what we do with the risk she has already taken. Something shifts in her expression, a kind of resolve settling into place. She tells me to follow her, and this time it is not toward the outer wall. It is toward the transport bay reserved for her personal guard. The journey to the Caldrisi capital takes 6 days by transport ship. Ale keeps me hidden in a private cabin, bringing food herself rather than trusting the ship's staff. During those 6 days, I tell her everything, not just my own story, but everything I have memorized over 3 years of captivity. Names of slavers, registry numbers of the ships that move prisoners between systems, the locations of holding facilities disguised as cargo depots. When you have nothing else to hold on to in a cell, you hold on to information, because information is the one thing they cannot chain down. Ale listens to all of it without interrupting, her expression growing darker with every detail. On the 4th day, she tells me that her people classify humans under a legal status called unverified sapience, a category that technically allows for our labor and trade because we have never been formally recognized as a fully sentient species under Caldrisi law. It is a loophole, she says, one that has existed for decades because no one with enough power has ever bothered to close it. I ask her how a species gets removed from that category. She says it usually requires a formal hearing before the sovereign's court, with evidence presented by someone the court considers credible. Historically, that has only ever been done by other Caldrisi nobles speaking on behalf of a species, never by a member of the species itself. No unverified being has ever been allowed to speak directly to the court. I tell her that is about to change. She looks at me for a long moment, then nods slowly, like she has just decided something important. She says she will use every connection her title still gives her to get me that hearing, even if it is the last thing she does as a princess of this empire. We arrive at the capital on the 7th day. The city stretches wider than anything I have ever seen, towers of pale stone rising against a sky, the color of dusk, even in the middle of the day. Some trick of the atmosphere I do not fully understand. Word of our arrival spreads faster than either of us expects. By the time we reach the palace gates, there are already whispers moving through the court. A princess returning from a diplomatic tour with a freed human at her side instead of a servant in chains. The nobility does not react well. I hear it in the way guards mutter to each other as we pass, see it in the way court officials look at me like I am something that has tracked mud across a clean floor. Ale tells me not to let it bother me. She says the same people whispering now will be forced to sit quietly and listen soon enough. Getting the hearing scheduled takes 3 more days of Ale calling in favors, meeting with officials, and, from what I can tell, spending political capital she cannot easily get back. During that time, word reaches the slaver guilds that a witness intends to testify before the sovereign's court. They do not take the news calmly. Ale tells me 2 attempts are made to have me quietly removed before the hearing can happen, both stopped by her personal guard before they can succeed. I do not ask for details. I do not think I want them. On the morning of the hearing, Ale comes to see me before I am called into the throne hall. She looks more nervous than I have seen her since the night she opened my cell. She tells me the sovereign is a practical man, not a cruel one, but practical men protect what benefits them, and the slave trade benefits a great many powerful families in this empire. She warns me that logic alone may not be enough. I tell her I do not plan to rely on logic alone. The throne hall is larger than any room I have ever stood in. Its ceiling lost somewhere in shadow far above. Its floor polished to a shine that reflects the light from 100 lamps set into the walls. Nobles line both sides of the hall, watching in silence, as I am led toward the center. At the far end, seated on a raised platform, is the sovereign himself, an older Caldrisi, with silver markings across his face that seem to indicate age or rank. I am not entirely sure which. Ale stands near the front, close enough that I can see her hands clasped tightly together. The sovereign speaks first, his voice carrying easily across the silent hall. He says he has been told a freed human wishes to address the court regarding matters of trade and legal status. He says this is unprecedented and asks if I understand the weight of what I am asking to do. I tell him I understand it better than anyone else in this room, because I have spent 3 years living the consequences of the laws he is asking me about. A murmur runs through the nobles. The sovereign raises a hand, and the hall falls silent again. He tells me to speak. I do not raise my voice. I do not need to. The hall is quiet enough that every word carries to the farthest corners. I tell him my name, and where I came from, a planet he has likely never heard of, and will likely never see. I tell him about the day I was taken, about the years that followed, about the platforms and the chains, and the buyers who looked at me the way one looks at furniture. I do not exaggerate. I do not need to. The truth is heavy enough on its own. Then I tell him about the information I carry. I give him names, dates, registry numbers, exact locations, all of it laid out clearly enough that anyone in the hall with access to Caldrisi trade records could verify every word within the hour. I tell him this is not the testimony of a broken creature grateful to have survived. This is the testimony of a witness who remembers everything done to him, and who has waited a long time to stand in a room where someone with the power to act might finally be listening. I tell him that humanity is not unverified anything. We are a species capable of enduring captivity for years, without losing the will to speak clearly when finally given the chance. I ask him what kind of law needs an entire species to be legally invisible in order to keep functioning. The hall stays silent for a long moment after I finish. I can see some of the nobles exchanging uneasy glances, whispering behind raised hands. The sovereign studies me with an expression I cannot quite read, somewhere between surprise and calculation. He asks Ale to step forward and confirm the details of how I came to stand before this court. She does, her voice steady despite the pressure of every eye in the hall turning toward her. She tells him everything, including the risk she took freeing me, without apology in her tone. The sovereign is quiet for a long time after that. Finally, he says that Caldrisi law requires any credible testimony regarding the mistreatment of a classified species to be formally investigated, regardless of the source. He says my testimony, backed by verifiable details and confirmed by a member of his own court, meets that standard, whether certain nobles in this hall find it convenient or not. He orders a formal inquiry opened into the trade practices I have described, effective immediately, with full authority to examine the records and holdings of any guild or noble house implicated. The hall erupts into murmurs again, some outraged, some quietly satisfied, but none of them able to argue against the sovereign's own words. He turns back to me and says that the question of humanity's legal status will be reviewed as part of this inquiry, a process that could take months, but a process that is now, for the first time, actually happening. It is not everything. I know that as I stand there, feeling the weight of 100 unfamiliar eyes still on me, months of investigation still lie ahead, along with resistance from every guild and family with something to lose. But it is a door that has never been opened before, and now it is open. In the weeks that follow, the inquiry moves faster than anyone expects, partly because Ale refuses to let it slow down, using what remains of her influence to keep officials focused, despite pressure from powerful families, to bury the whole matter quietly. Several noble houses lose standing as their involvement in the trade becomes public record. Guild leaders who once operated freely find themselves facing questions they cannot answer without incriminating themselves. It is not a clean process. It is not a fast one. But it is real, and it does not stop. Ale becomes something of a lightning rod in the court, no longer just a quiet third daughter overshadowed by her siblings, but the face of a movement that many nobles resent, and just as many quietly support. She tells me once, late in the process, that she never expected freeing one prisoner at dawn would end up reshaping how her entire government defines who counts as a person. I tell her that is usually how it works. Change rarely announces itself in advance. It just walks through the door someone finally decided to open. As for me, I do not disappear back into anonymity, and I do not run the way anyone expected me to that first morning. I stay, testifying further as the inquiry deepens, working alongside the investigators to identify more holding facilities, more trade routes, more names that need to be added to the record. Other humans begin to be found as the investigation widens, some in conditions I recognize all too well, and each one who is freed is another thread pulling at a system that has operated in the shadows for far too long. I think about that morning often, the sound of chains hitting the floor, the quiet click of a lock breaking before dawn. Ale could have freed me and let me vanish into the crowd, and no one would have questioned her for it. Instead, she gave me a chance to be more than a story of survival. She gave me a chance to be a witness, and I think that is the part the Empire never saw coming. They expected a frightened man to run and hide the moment he tasted freedom. What they got instead was someone who walked straight into the heart of their power and refused to leave until they were forced to listen.